And welcome back to the show. Well, founded in 1875, the mission of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children is to respond to the complex needs of abused and neglected children and those involved in their care. That's by providing best practice counseling, legal, as well as educational services. Now, through research, communications, and training initiatives, NYSPCC is dedicated to providing these services free of charge to the most vulnerable children and families in New York City, as well as to the caring professionals who work in these populations. I'm joined now to share more about this by the Executive Director of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, Dr. Mary Pulido. And Dr. Pulido, good to have you.
Thank you. It's very good to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And when we talk about dealing with children and cruelty to children, definitely our most vulnerable population, that and seniors. You've had your effort in terms of dealing with these issues. Talk to us a little bit about your organization.
Sure. Well, the first, just a tiny bit of history is that the NYSPCC is the first child protection agency in the world. And we were founded in 1875 right here in Hell's Kitchen because a little girl was being abused. Her name was Mary Ellen, and a church worker named Etta Wheeler didn't know what to do because there were no one to protect children. There were only laws to protect animals. So she went to the ASPCA and asked them to intervene. And they went in and rescued the little girl and then wrote the basic laws that started the child protection system in the United States today and founded the NYSPCC. So if you go from where we were ACS before there was ACS. We went in, we did investigations, we did removals. And then in the 1970s, the government took over that function, and we went on to do other services for children and families. And today we provide critical mental health services. We have a trauma recovery program that serves children who are recovering from physical abuse, sexual abuse, witnessing the homicide of a parent, horrific neglect. And we embrace these children, and we embrace the other members of the family to support them in the healing, the non-offending family members. And we work with them with all different types of therapy. It can be trauma-focused, cognitive behavioral therapy, play therapy, dance therapy, whatever that child needs in order to begin to heal and get over the symptoms that they're experiencing and the PTSD and depression or anger, so that they can go on to really start to thrive again and do well in school. We have collateral meetings with the schools, with the foster care agencies, with ACS, with the family members, so that these children really have the opportunity and the chance to heal and grow and thrive. And we don't charge for any of our services. And the children, we don't put a limit. It's not 12 sessions and you're done. If this child needs to be with us for a year, they're here with us for a year. And we're very fortunate to be able to provide that to the children of New York City.
Talk to me a little bit about, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but talk to me a little bit about, as you deal, this is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so share with us a little bit about what exactly is child abuse?
All right, child abuse is any action that is taken with the intent to harm a child. In fact, if you look at child abuse and neglect, because they're often lumped together, but they're at opposite ends of the continuum. With child abuse, it means that an adult or a caretaker, a parent, is having an action to physically, mentally, sexually harm a child. They can be sexually abusing them, they can be hitting them, beating them, burning them, punching them, but it's an action and there's intent. When you look at neglect, which is the other end of the spectrum, it means the parent or caretaker is not taking action to keep a child safe. So you would see educational neglect, they're not going to school. Medical neglect, they're sick and they're not getting the care that they need or the food that they need. Emotional neglect where, babies are left in cribs by themselves and no one is taking attention to them. So April is the month where we try to call attention to all the issues that are facing children and the dangers that they're up to, and also to offer support for the caretakers and the parents who need it, so that they as families can thrive and reach out. The majority of children in New York City are removed for neglect, and you are able to put systems in place so that they can be reunited, because children really, they need a family. And if we can put enough services in place afterwards, and preferably preventive services beforehand, then that's why hopefully the numbers of children in foster care will continue to decrease.
You talk about the word beforehand, but I want to have an opportunity for our viewers who may not be so familiar as to maybe some of the signs or the symptoms of child abuse. When we look at someone or we look at a situation, what are some of the warning signs for potential child abuse?
Sure. Well, if you're just looking at physical abuse, when you look at a child and the child has, if a child has bruises because they're roughhousing or playing, when they fall, they scrape their hands, they scrape their knees, they scrape their elbows. But if you're seeing a child with a bruise on the neck or the forehead, or like the back of the arms, those are not places where children normally get hurt. So those types of injuries should make you think something's not right. Any injury on a baby, I think, or a toddler, they're running into things, but parents and caretakers should really be extra careful at watching them. So those should also be looked at really, I think really very quickly. If a child is depressed, if a child is always outgoing, you may all of a sudden start seeing changes in their behavior. And that can range from being very sad and clingy and crying to anger and aggression. But you would see a change if a child is being abused, or you would, hear crying. That's not a normal, I want my toy crying, but it's a tragic crying and upsetting crying. And that's why we also, ask people to take that step and get involved and reach out and find out what's going on, even if it's anxiety provoking, because that is one way of keeping children safe. And the majority of children in New York City that experience child fatality are under the age of 4. They're not in the public eye. They're not in school all the time. They're infants and toddlers. And we need everyone to keep eyes open on children that may be at risk, and then to call the hotline and make a report. Even if it's anxious, I encourage people, do it. You can do it anonymously, and you can save a child's life. One of the saddest things is to hear on the news after a child fatality occurs is someone to say, I thought I heard this, I should have done something. And Child Abuse Prevention Month is sort of our call to action to say to everyone, please do something. Please take that step and get involved. You could save a child's life.
Yeah. And once the child is abused, there is a certain amount of emotional trauma, psychological trauma that one endures, not just for the child, but potentially for those connected too. I know that you do great work with a trauma recovery program. Share with us a little bit about the trauma recovery program and how that's instrumental in the road towards healing.
Absolutely. We get many of our referrals come from ACS or foster care system. And they're for children that have experienced, the physical abuse, sexual abuse, or even community violence, severe neglect. And our clinicians are very specially trained to work with children to help one stabilize them, and so that they're able to have conversations and start the healing process. And we see children usually from the ages of 5, if they're very verbal, possibly 4, all the way up to the age of 21. And the goal is really to help them understand that the trauma was not their fault, give them coping mechanisms when they start to get triggered, help them come up with different skills to manage their anxiety, their depression, their PTSD. And at the same time, working with a supportive family member. We don't want to see children in isolation, because we want someone with them after they leave us so that they understand how to support the child when the child gets triggered, when the child's acting out, when the child's very sad. And through our work, we're able to keep these children and work with the schools and their other entities in their life, all the collateral systems, so that they are really supported until they heal. And we keep children in our program for as long as they need to be kept. We don't have a limit. And we've had really amazing results, and children do heal. They do heal, and they can go on to lead wonderful, productive lives.
Yeah. You know, sometimes when you think about the healing process, it can be lengthy, but the beauty is having an organization such as yourself being able to be with them long term throughout the process. And so you say that you stay with these children as well as their caretakers as necessary, as long as needed.
Correct.
Great. And I also want to take the opportunity to share a little bit about another program that I know that you have, and that's the Safe Touches program. So for our viewers, make us more acquainted with the Safe Touches program.
Oh, I'd love to, because Safe Touches is on also the other end. But one of our programs is healing, and Safe Touches is all about prevention. We have a curriculum for children from kindergarten all the way up through the 12th grade with, you know, the 4 or 5 different versions based on the age level. And the most popular one is the one for kindergarten through 3rd grade, and it's Safe Touches. It's a puppet show that teaches children the difference between what is a safe touch and what is a not safe touch, what parts of their body are private, who's allowed to touch them in private parts and when. If they receive a not safe touch, who do they tell? Who do they go to? And help them identify safe adults in their life that they can tell if they've had a not safe touch. And we were fortunate to get a grant from NIH to do a randomized controlled trial in the high needs schools in the New York City public school system. And it's evidence-based and it works. It's being replicated throughout New York, and Penn State is now taking it on to replicate it through Pennsylvania and the country of Greece. So we're really excited about it. But one thing I'd like to tell the viewers in the Bronx is that the Horace Mann School has funded us to provide the Safe Touches workshop from kindergarten through the 3rd grade to any public school that would like it. And to date, we've reached close to 30,000 children in the Bronx public school system from kindergarten through the 3rd grade. So if anyone here would like to have the Safe Touches come in, we're happy to do it. If you visit our website, we'd sign you up and come into your classroom.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. As we talk a little bit further about a lot of the programs that you have, I know that one of the things that we have to deal with child abuse sometimes is that parent, and that parent that can be the abuser. And I know court mandated action will say, listen, you know what, as a part of this, you'll be separated from your child, whether removed from the home or visitation. Walk us through a little bit about some of the services and the support services that you have for parents who are trying to rekindle and restore that relationship through visitation.
Sure. We have one of the only therapeutic supervised visitation programs in New York City. And what we do is that the judge would order supervised visitation when there's been an issue between the parents and the child, or the parents' domestic violence has impacted the child. But it's usually parents who have substance abuse, mental illness, domestic violence, child abuse and neglect, or a combination thereof. And the judge has said you cannot see your child unless there's a therapist in the room guarding the interaction. So initially, many years ago, we just had therapists that just sat there and sort of just made sure the child was safe. But then over the years, we decided that we were missing an opportunity to really work with these parents to help them get the skills to repair and restore the relationship with the child, because children want to have a relationship with the parent at most of the time. They just don't want the abuse. They don't want the neglect. So we're working with the strengths-based perspective, trying to we set goals with the parent so that they understand what's going to happen during the visit. We work with the child to make sure the child's safety is maintained at all costs. And these visits happen, it depends on the age of the child, once a week if it's an infant or toddler, which we're also working with strong starts in Bronx Family Court on the babies and toddlers that have been separated. They may see their parents more often than once a week. And we guide the parent through appropriate parenting skills, how to interact with the child, how to respond to the child's needs. If the child's older, sometimes there's that very difficult conversations about, why, what happened, whatever the abuse was occurred. So that healing process can also start during the visits. And the goal is to eventually have the court satisfied that the parent is understanding their impact of the reason why they can't see their child and is making amends to correct those things so that eventually they can move to what's called supervised transfers or unsupervised visits, in the community, maybe with the family member. But that's the goal, is to move the parents along a continuum. And then in tandem with that, we also have it's called the parenting journey, which is a parent education class for the parents that are ordered to have supervised visits. And it really helps them. Many of these parents have been traumatized themselves and have very extensive trauma histories. So what we're trying to do in the parenting journey is help them understand how their experiences and their traumas have impacted their parenting. And it gives them a safe place to talk about it with other parents and a safe place to begin to say, all right, I don't want to repeat these mistakes again. Where do I go from here? And then the other component I'll just mention is that the custodial parent, we also have support for them, particularly in the areas of domestic violence, so that they then also can be accessing services and therapy and counseling and whatever else they need to repair and restore and move on from whatever abuse occurred. But we're one of the few programs in New York City that's doing this. We have a contract right now also with ACS to provide these services for parents, because we truly do believe in people's abilities to change and grow and repair and restore.
Yeah. One of the things I've become very familiar with are bereaved children, and knowing that there's a lot of parents out there who, have been involved, whether it's through, accidents or just natural causes. And that whole system of bereavement in the life of a child is huge. So a little bit about what you do in terms of helping children and families able to cope when you have the loss of a loved one, particularly a parent.
Sure. Well, those children probably would be referred to the trauma recovery program so that they can better understand the grief and loss symptoms that they are experiencing, and also to offer different levels of support for a child that lost a parent and may not understand the grief that let's just say the mother is going through. The mother needs another type of counseling and support. So we're able to help the mother get the resources, or the father the resources that they need to deal with their grief, while helping them support the child's healing process. Because very often the adults are very enmeshed in their own grief and they need their own support too. And children they could internalize, they could externalize, but what we really want to do is make sure that everyone that's there gets the support they need. So our trauma recovery therapist would be working with them on all different aspects of grief and loss and healing and moving on, and working with their school to make sure the schools understand what the child is also going through, and any other, collateral components.
Dr. Mary Pulido, we're going to leave it there because we got such an interesting time and conversation, uplifting information in terms of National Child Abuse Month, Awareness Month. Please give us some final thoughts before we go.
Sure. What I would just say is that I hope that everyone makes an attempt to learn about the signs and symptoms of child abuse, and to call, you know, the 1-800-4A-CHILD is the national hotline number. If you feel that a child is in danger, you know, please reach out and please visit our website. It has a lot of resources, NYSPCC.org, and we're happy to, you know, respond to anyone. They send us an email and get the resources to you. But just thank you for having me, and thank you for taking the time to learn more about our work.
No, we thank you so much, Dr. Mary Pulido. Thank you so much for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums. We do have more show. We encourage you to stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.